At 19, Sophia signed a contract. It was her shot at a dream, financial freedom by the time she turned 30. She believed that if she stuck to the plan, she'd never have to worry about money again. Today, at 33, Sophia sleeps 4 hours a night and juggles 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. So, what went wrong? Who promised her a bright future? And how did it all turn into a quiet nightmare? This isn't just Sophia's story. It's the story of millions who put their trust in the system and are now barely getting by. But what no one knows is that it all started with a conversation in a coffee shop with a man named Dylan. Sophia never had much. She grew up in a home where every penny was counted. Raised by a single mother, she knew what overdue bills, eviction notices, and an empty fridge sounded like. As a child, she made herself a promise. I'll never live like this. At 19, Sophia was studying business at a local community college and working as a barista in a small coffee shop downtown Portland. That's where, between cappuccinos and crumpled receipts, she met Dylan McAllister. Dylan wasn't your average customer. He showed up every morning at 8:15 sharp, always in crisp shirts, and wearing a watch Sophia had only seen in online ads. He read reports, took calls using words like diversified portfolio, indexed funds, and scalable liabilities. Curious, Sophia struck up a conversation. "Do you work in finance?" she asked one morning. Dylan smiled. "I don't just work in finance. I teach people how to never have to work again." That line stuck in her head. The next week, Dylan came back with an invitation, a free seminar he was leading himself. Financial Freedom Before 30, the real plan for starting from zero. Sophia went. The room was packed. Young people, couples, families. On stage, Dylan was like a conductor. He spoke with confidence, showed graphs, shared success stories. He introduced a method called multiplied income, a system that promised to convert active income into passive within 8 to 10 years. He said, "The current system is designed to keep you enslaved, work for 40 years, retire with scraps, and die exhausted. But there's another path, and it's not luck, it's math, it's strategy." Sophia left inspired. No one had ever spoken to her like that. On the way out, she was handed a black folder with a personalized plan inside. Invest 20% of her income, start a small digital business for side revenue, and reinvest everything into scalable assets. It sounded hard, but possible. Dylan invited her to a one-on-one mentorship program, 3 months, weekly meetings, personal guidance. The cost? $1,200, way more than Sophia could afford. But Dylan offered a partial scholarship plan for committed students. She was accepted. That changed everything. For weeks, she dove into books, videos, spreadsheets, and goals. She learned how to cut expenses, stretch her money, and even launched an online shop selling handmade jewelry. Dylan always told her, "One day, you'll thank today's Sophia for believing." And she did believe. She wasn't naive, she was brave. At least, that's what she told herself whenever the fear crept in. Because deep down, something still didn't make sense. No matter how hard she worked, the money never seemed enough to take the next step. What she didn't know was that the plan had a hidden flaw, one that would change everything. Sophia's first year on the plan looked promising. She followed every step, cut up her credit cards, stopped going out, reduced life to the essentials. Her barista job barely covered the basics, but her online store began to grow. She sold handmade necklaces on Etsy. Soon she had loyal customers, great reviews, even plans to expand. Dylan tracked her progress. "This is just the beginning. The curve starts slow, then it skyrockets," he'd say. Then came 2020. The pandemic hit like a blindside hurricane, and its first strike landed squarely on Sophia's business. Lockdowns caused supplier delays. Shipping froze. Refund requests piled up. Within 3 months, everything she'd built was gone. Panicked, Sophia reached out to Dylan. He replied coldly, "Every crisis is an opportunity. You need to pivot, adapt fast." But she had no capital, no inventory. Her rent increased. School reintroduced suspended fees, and the coffee shop shut down for good. The plan that once felt like concrete now cracked like thin glass. With no income, Sophia took a night shift job at a warehouse. Exhausting hours, Monday through Saturday, packing boxes and whispering to herself, this wasn't part of the plan. Still, she didn't quit. She rewatched Dylan's videos, reread the PDFs, clung to his promises. Maybe she had messed up somewhere. Maybe she hadn't been disciplined enough. After all, Dylan said, if you're not harvesting yet, it's because you haven't planted enough. That idea became a quiet poison. Instead of questioning the plan, Sophia began blaming herself. That's when she started a journal, a financial diary. She wrote down every cent spent, every hour worked, every minute slept, even thoughts too dark to say aloud. One entry read, today I thought about giving up, but if I quit, it means I'm weak, and the weak die broke. The collapse wasn't just financial, it was mental. She cried in the warehouse bathroom, stared at the ceiling for hours, trying to remember the face of the girl who once met Dylan over a cup of coffee. And still, she kept going. She got a second job, remote customer support for a tech company, overnight hours, low pay. But it was something. Dylan kept posting weekly YouTube videos, titles like Earn Your First Passive Income in 6 Months and The Real Formula for Those Who Truly Want to Win. Sophia watched everyone. Each like was a silent prayer. Maybe someday this will still work for me. But she didn't know. Another collapse was coming, and this time it wouldn't be from a pandemic. It would come from inside the plan itself. The months dragged on. Sophia no longer remembered what rest felt like. 3 jobs, fragmented sleep, chronic exhaustion that dulled her memory and drained her creativity. And yet, she kept the flame alive. She still believed Dylan's plan, even with detours, was the way. Until one night, something happened, something small, almost forgettable, but it would change everything. It was a regular Sunday night when Sophia received an email, subject, mentorship terms update, Dylan McAllister Institute. She almost ignored it, but for some reason she opened it. Buried among cold paragraphs and legal jargon, one sentence stood out. As stipulated in the original mentorship agreement, direct or indirect profits resulting from applied strategies are subject to a 12% contribution to the Dylan McAllister Institute for an indefinite period. Sophia froze. Direct or indirect profits, contribution, indefinite. She didn't remember any of that. She tore through her old inbox, digging through folders. Eventually, she found it, the digitally signed contract from 3 years ago. And there it was, tiny print, buried deep in the legal terms. Clause 14.3. In exchange for strategic mentorship, the mentor reserves the right to a percentage share of any and all outcomes derived from the presented models and techniques without time limitation. It felt like a punch to the gut. She reread it over and over, trying to understand how she missed it. Then she remembered. The contract was shown at the 3rd meeting, explained as a formality for member access and use of proprietary methods. Back then, Sophia didn't ask questions. She trusted him. And now, that trust began turning into something else, something bitter. She started digging. She found online forums filled with Dylan's former students. And there it was, a chilling pattern. People who tried to break away from the model were hit with legal threats. Former mentees being charged for projects that no longer involved Dylan. Testimonies of years lost trying to pay off a so-called debt of gratitude to the man who promised freedom. Sophia felt betrayed, but the worst part came when she tried to reach out. Emails, DMS, even a certified letter. Nothing. Dylan had vanished. His videos were still online, his courses still selling. But him? Gone. He'd built an empire using fine print, seductive language, and a carefully crafted guru image. And slowly, Sophia realized she wasn't the exception. She was the business model. Financial freedom was just bait. The real plan was to multiply income, his, not theirs. That night, she lay in bed, staring at the cracked ceiling of her tiny apartment, and for the first time in years, she felt rage. Rage at Dylan, rage at herself, and most of all, rage at the fact that while she burned out in 3 jobs, someone else out there was living her dream, and he used her dream as a ladder. But Sophia was no longer the girl from the coffee shop. She was about to do something Dylan never saw coming. Sophia spent an entire week in silence. Not for lack of words, but for an overflow of thoughts. She went to work like a robot, walked, smiled at customers, typed in the support chat, but something inside her had shifted. The world didn't seem chaotic anymore. It seemed clear. For the first time, she could see the game. Dylan wasn't a guru, he was a strategist, and she was just a piece, until now. That's when she made a quiet decision. She wouldn't expose Dylan. Not yet. She'd do something more powerful, use everything he taught her, against him. Sophia reopened her online shop, but this time, she wasn't selling necklaces. She started to write. She launched a blog under a discreet name, Diary of a Former Apprentice. There, she began telling her story, in weekly chapters signed under the pseudonym A.S. She never mentioned Dylan by name. She used metaphors, described the techniques, the emotions, the mistakes, the lessons. And slowly, readers began to show up. First 5, then 50, then 1,000. She used the same organic traffic strategies Dylan taught her, SEO, CTAS, emotional funnels. But this time, she wasn't selling anything. She was just telling the truth. And truth has a power no promise can beat. Behind the scenes, Sophia kept learning, not about financial freedom anymore, but about human behavior, psychological manipulation, and business ethics. She enrolled in online courses in consumer psychology, contract law, and digital marketing. With whatever time she had, even if it was just an hour a day, she was relearning the world through a different lens. Within 6 months, Sophia's blog started to go viral. Websites began sharing her posts. Podcasts reached out for interviews, and she accepted, always with voice modification and her identity hidden. Then, a video popped up on YouTube. Title, I was mentored by Dylan McAllister. Here's what he doesn't tell you. It wasn't Sophia's. It was by a young woman named Emily from Arizona. And soon after, others followed. Dozens of them. It was as if Sophia's quiet voice had awakened hundreds of others. Dylan tried to respond. He posted denial videos, changed terms on his site, launched a new course to rebrand his image. But something had changed. The trust was broken. Sophia didn't become rich. She was still working 2 jobs. But the third one was different. She was a writer. A literary agent reached out. They signed a deal for a non-fiction book based on her blog. The title? The Price of Freedom: How Not to Follow a Success Plan. The publisher was clear. They wanted the real story, with names, dates, and proof. Sophia hesitated, but at that point, she wasn't afraid anymore. The truth was no longer a burden. It was her weapon. On a cold morning, while sipping coffee in a place that reminded her of the cafe where it all began, Sophia wrote a line on the back cover of her journal. It wasn't failure. It was the cost of clarity. And now that I've seen, I'll never go back to sleep. She didn't win the way she planned, but she won in the only way that mattered, by reclaiming her own story. And Dylan? He's still out there, selling dreams in sponsored videos. But now, when someone Googles his name, Sophia's blog shows up right underneath, quiet, but relentless. Sophia learned something most people still refuse to see. Not every dream they sell you is actually yours. She wanted financial freedom, but what she got was a golden cage, built from pretty words, edited promises, and contracts crafted with surgical precision. In the end, it wasn't money she lost. It was time. It was faith. It was identity. And maybe that's the most expensive thing a person can lose. But there's one thing no one could take from her: the ability to start over, even from the ground, to rebuild without applause, and to see through the polish of rehearsed speeches. Sophia didn't become a millionaire. She became clear-eyed. And in a world full of people selling shortcuts, clarity is one of the rarest things there is. Now the question is, how many of us are following plans we didn't build, but accepted out of fear of being left behind? How many of us are measuring success by the rules of those who profit from our hurry? Maybe today is the day to stop, to close your eyes and ask yourself, is this plan mine, or just another script they convinced me to follow? If this story resonated with you, leave a comment below. I woke up too. It might be just a sentence for some, but for the person writing it, it's a beginning. And if you want to keep hearing stories like this, real stories, the kind no one dares to tell, subscribe to the channel, but only if you're ready to look beyond what they show you. Because here, we don't sell dreams, we reveal what's behind them. See you in the next episode.